Hello and welcome to Say San Diego's Whole Family Wellness webinar on exploring emotions. My name is Alicia Copy and I am the program director for our wellness center here at Say San Diego. We wanted to take a quick moment to thank United Healthcare for sponsoring this event. This is our last of 4 webinars that we've hosted this year. And we just want to let you know how happy we are that you are here today joining us. Following the presentation, please take some time to check out our past presentations through our Say San Diego YouTube page. We have, like I said, 3 previous ones that were all excellent and definitely worth checking out. Today, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Tiffany Music, who is a leadership coach and facilitator who works with her clients to identify and challenge barriers that keep them stuck in patterns that keep them from living the life that they desire. Tiffany is an associate certified coach with the International Coaching Federation, a board certified coach with the Center for Credentialing and Education, and has her master's in leadership studies from the University of San Diego. We are so excited to have her back to speak on exploring emotions. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to pass it on to Tiffany.
Thanks, Alicia. I'm very, very happy to be back with all of you and talking a little bit about emotions today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. Awesome. So, emotions. Emotions can be really confusing, really overwhelming, and at times can feel like a barrier to being the person we want to be or showing up in our lives the way that we want to. And while we cannot address all of that today, I do want to spend some time just providing a little bit more information on what emotions are so we can demystify them a little bit, better understand their purpose, and then consider how we can begin to change how we relate to our emotions. So first of all, it can be difficult to even describe emotions. For example, consider what it actually means to be angry. What does that mean? How would you describe that to somebody who wasn't familiar with anger? We may not know how to put it into words, but we certainly know when we feel it and often when we see emotion in other people. And so take just a moment to consider these images of people with different emotional experiences. It's probably pretty easy to identify what kind of emotion they're feeling, right? We know it when we see it, we know it when we feel it. And I also want to offer that emotions are so important and so necessary to our experience as humans that they are present in our digital communications too, right? Emojis have become a staple of technology as a way to express something beyond what just our written words can, right? It gives our words a tone, it gives our communication a clearer sense of the feeling behind what we're communicating. So we'll start by taking some time to just look at what emotions are. And of course, there's not an easy definition to this. They're very complex. And the American Psychological Association offers a definition that they're complex reaction pattern involving experiential, behavioral, and physiological elements by which an individual attempts to deal with a personally significant matter or event. That is a mouthful. Let's break it down a little bit. First of all, I want to offer that there are a lot of emotions. So Brene Brown led an extensive study and identified 87 different emotional experiences. 87. So if you're ever having trouble determining exactly what you're feeling, you're not alone. That is a lot of different emotional experiences to manage. You're not crazy. It's a lot going on. And while there are a lot of emotions, we tend to group emotions in like some broad overarching categories. The most common, the most well-known are anger, sadness, joy, and fear. And that is not all of the categories, but those tend to be the ones that come up or people tend to think about most often. But I want to offer that even within these categories, there are various levels of intensity, right? So think about within the anger category, you can feel annoyed, you can feel frustrated, you can feel angry, you can feel rage, right? And there's also a lot of intersection between emotions. So often we're not just feeling one emotion, we're feeling a mixture of emotion. If you've ever experienced a moment of feeling like something's really bittersweet, you're actually happy and a little bit sad at the same time. Or maybe you feel really disappointed and there's an element of anger, but there's also maybe an element of hurt or being kind of sad, feeling really let down by somebody. So very complex, a lot of moving parts. Um, and our emotions are really tied to a few different things. Our physical sensation or our physiological responses, what's happening in our body, our mental state, our thoughts, the stories that we're telling ourselves, and then behaviors, our responses, our actions. And we'll take just a little bit of time to look into each one of these and what that means. So first, emotions and our bodies. And I start with this one because it is so, so crucial. It is such a huge part of our emotional experiences. Emotions are also called feelings because we feel them physically in our bodies. And in fact, physical sensations are kind of our first clue that we are experiencing an emotion, right? We know we're angry because our body tells us that we are angry, right? And every emotion has these physical components. Um, and some emotions are more uncomfortable than others, while others we experience as being more pleasant in our bodies. So joy, excitement, those we tend to enjoy, right? Intend to enjoy feeling that way, where others, such as maybe sadness or fear, are more uncomfortable. Anxiety, for example, it's hard to hold that in our bodies. It's hard to experience the physical component of that. And because of that, people often want to kind of get rid of that uncomfortable feeling, right? They want to kind of eliminate that moment of discomfort. But emotions are incredibly, incredibly helpful. They are sources of information, and there's a lot that we can learn from them. And we'll get back to that a little bit more later. But a few things to consider when we're looking at emotions in our bodies is kind of looking at possibly the last time that you felt a strong emotion. Maybe the last time that you felt anger, maybe something happened this week, maybe something happened today, right, that got you really frustrated, or where you experienced sadness or some excitement. And maybe just taking a moment to consider what was happening in your body in this moment, or how did you know that you were experiencing that particular emotion? So for me, I know that some of my signals, for example, with anger, are that my heart begins to race a little bit, starts beating faster. I start to feel tension, often in my shoulders and in my jaw. I can often feel heat in my face flushes, right? Maybe I'm gripping in my hands. And so these are just examples of some of the cues that our body gives us. You may have heard or experienced the feeling of butterflies in your stomach, right? That coincides with maybe some fear, maybe some anxiety, maybe some anticipation, maybe some excitement, right? So really looking at these physical components. And since our body gives us these cues, we have the ability to begin to recognize them quicker, to become familiar with the patterns of our body, and to know, okay, this emotion is arising for me. I know because I can feel it. And when we can do that, we can also more effectively kind of manage our emotions over time so that they don't get to a point of feeling really, really overwhelming. The next component is emotions and our minds. So our minds have, our emotions have associated kind of narratives or ways of thinking. Um, and I'll kind of give you an example. So let's say I'm at work and my coworker, Sarah, who I have a great relationship with, walks past me. I say hello like I do every morning, and she completely ignores me, walks past me, doesn't respond, goes into her office. What's my response here? What's my initial reaction? I'm guessing initially I'm going to be maybe a little caught off guard, maybe a little shocked or confused. That wasn't like her. What's going on? That feels really odd. I go to my desk, and as I continue thinking about this really odd interaction, I start thinking, you know what? Maybe I did something. Maybe I did something. What did I do? I start recounting every interaction we've had for the last week, and I start to get kind of nervous. I start to get kind of worried, right? That maybe I made her angry, maybe I upset her. And then as the day goes on, maybe I start to get a little frustrated, a little angry because really, how dare she, right? If she has a problem with me, she can come and talk to me. That's the more mature thing to do. So then I'm angry. Maybe I'm a little frustrated. I'm upset with Sarah, right? And so you can see this evolution of the story that we're telling ourselves and the emotional and physical component. Later, I see Sarah in the break room and ask her, "Hey, what's going on? You didn't say hi." And I find out that she actually got some really, really upsetting news that morning and was just completely mentally spaced out and didn't even hear me say hello. To which I might then feel maybe a little guilty for getting so angry. Maybe I start to feel kind of worried or wanting to comfort or console her, right? So you can see just how quickly the story changes our emotional experience and how much those are tied together. And so, some things to consider again as we think about the connection between our emotions and our minds is, what are you telling yourself about when you're experiencing something emotionally? How does the story evolve? And as the story evolves, how do your emotions evolve? And then looking at emotions and our behaviors. So, we tend to desire to do certain things when we're feeling a certain way. Examples of this are maybe when we're really angry, we feel like lashing out, right? When we're scared, maybe we feel like avoiding certain people or places or activities. Maybe when we're really sad, we feel like isolating and not being around anyone. Um, and this is the other piece about emotions, that often people want to cut off or maybe avoid emotions or not deal with them because they tend to lead to behaviors that they don't like, or maybe that they regret, or that don't feel aligned with who they want to be or how they want to show up in their lives and their relationships. And so, some things to consider as you experience emotions, maybe reflecting on, again, a time this week, or maybe just keeping this in mind for the future, is, what do you feel the urge to do? And how do you feel afterwards? How does engaging in this behavior or not impact the way that you feel? And of course, we actually do have the ability to choose our responses, even when we're having an emotional experience. But this does take some time, and we can revisit this a little bit later as well. So moving forward, so why are emotions important? There's several different reasons, and I'll just kind of touch on a few of those today. First, we are emotional beings. First and foremost, we are emotional. Our emotions are so connected with the fabric of our humanity, really. To be emotional is to be human, to be human is to be emotional. And so to disconnect with our emotions is a really unnatural state. They're part of us, and they're a really important part. And so to better understand and honor our emotions and what we're feeling is actually to better understand and honor ourselves. Emotions impact our physical and mental health. So, as we just kind of looked at, the mind and body are so interconnected. So, if we cut off a part of either, it impacts the whole. And then finally, the intention, the purpose of emotions is actually really good. They exist to help us and to inform us. They exist to keep us safe, to make sense of the world, to help us determine what's important to us. One moment. They exist to help and inform us. They exist to help keep us safe, to make sense of the world, help us determine what's important to us, make sure that we're aligning with our values. They are really vital sources of information that can help us and serve us. So having said all of that, I want to emphasize that emotions aren't the problem. Emotions are good things, they're helpful. And so our goal isn't to avoid our emotions or to cut ourselves off from them. It is actually to improve our relationship with them, how we relate to them. So we'll take a little bit of time to look at this shift in mindset, this shift in relationship from one of a foe to a friend. And I'll just offer kind of an overview of what this looks like, and then we'll dive into each piece a little bit more. So coming at our emotions as a foe, as a barrier, we tend to want to avoid them, push them away. We're not really interested in understanding them. We tend to judge them or diminish them or see them as an obstacle to overcome. So something that gets in the way of us living our lives. When we move to seeing them as a friend, we start to welcome them, to make space for them, to try to understand them and be curious about them, to suspend judgment and this desire to label them as good or bad, positive or negative, recognizing that they have a purpose and are useful, and then setting some boundaries with them as well. And so we'll look into each of those in a little bit more depth here. So to begin with, as with any relationship that you want to improve, start by making some space for it. Start with taking time to notice and acknowledge your emotions, right? And we do this first by just starting to notice them, to feel them. And this can be hard with the uncomfortable ones, right? We don't want to notice them, we don't want to feel them, but making some space for those as well. And if you can, naming them, which of course can be hard with over 80 emotional experiences. But if you can, taking a moment to consider, what is it that I'm actually feeling right now? Trying not to label or judge, which also can be really difficult. We tend to like to categorize information. It helps us make sense of things. So this is good and this is bad, this is right and this is wrong. But being able to kind of suspend that judgment, that label, and recognize that all emotions have purpose, right? There's an intention behind each one, and giving yourself permission to feel what you're feeling. All emotions are helpful. All emotions can be helpful, are valid, and it's okay to feel them. And so part of making space for emotions is creating distance between ourselves and then maybe whatever is kind of prompting the emotion. And you can do this in several different ways. And these moments just give us a pause to take the opportunity to check in with ourselves and to get back in the driver's seat if our emotions are currently in the driver's seat. And we will revisit this analogy a little bit later. So some options: going for a walk. I'm having maybe an intense emotional experience. I need a little space. I'm going to go for a walk and check in with myself. Take a few deep breaths, maybe listen to a guided meditation or practice some mindfulness. And this is really, checking in with our senses, checking in with what's going on around us. And then refocusing our attention can be helpful as well. And I want to just clarify that refocusing attention can be helpful in moments of really intense emotion, but it's not the same as avoiding the emotion, right? We don't want to avoid the emotion. So it's not, the purpose isn't to push it away or to avoid it or to suppress it or anything. It's to allow time for our nervous system to kind of settle, for our thinking brains to come back online so that we can then revisit our emotions and what they're trying to communicate to us from a more grounded place. So just a quick distinction there. So another important piece of improving any relationship, but also the relationship with our emotions, is getting curious. So how much does it impact our relationships when we show up with a spirit of trying to understand, trying to explore and get on the same page versus being right or pointing out why somebody else is wrong or proving a point, right? Coming with an open spirit of what can I learn here? What can I learn here? Can be really helpful. And we can do this with emotions as well. And so there are a few questions here looking at what am I feeling? Where am I experiencing it in my body? How would I describe it? What I'm experiencing? What's going on in my mind? What do I have the urge to do? And then the other piece, and we'll explore these in a little bit more depth in just a moment, is this idea of what's being communicated, right? Since emotions are our body's way of communicating with us, what is it trying to communicate? What can I learn here? And then another key component of any healthy relationship is setting healthy boundaries. We are not our emotions. Our emotions are a part of us, but that's not all that we are, right? And it's helpful to remember too that just because we experience an uncomfortable emotion doesn't necessarily mean that anything's wrong. So, since our emotions are tied to our mental state, to the things that we're telling ourselves, if we're telling ourselves something that isn't very reasonable or productive or helpful, our emotions might not be helping us so much. They may not be indicating accurately what's going on. Take the example I used earlier with my coworker, Sarah, right? So my emotions, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling all of these things based on this narrative I'm telling myself, which weren't actually even the case, right? They weren't even an indication of what was really happening around me. And finally, emotions are our body's ways of communicating, but we get to decide, is this information helpful? Is this information useful to me right now? And how do I want to respond to this information? And with that, we'll take a look a little bit more at this idea of boundary setting, and returning to that analogy that I kind of introduced a little bit earlier, this idea of who is in the driver's seat. So when we are in the driver's seat, we can learn from our emotions as our passengers. We can use them as a catalyst to take meaningful action, such as maybe creating an important boundary. When we let emotions drive, they can actually keep us from doing things that are meaningful to us, or they can prompt us to act in ways that aren't really aligned with who we want to be. And so it's really important to kind of ask this question, who's in the driver's seat? So examples of this, when anger is in the driver's seat, um, we can stay stuck in our anger. We can find ourselves being really reactive, reacting in ways that are unproductive or that have negative consequences for ourselves, our relationships. When we are in the driver's seat and anger is a passenger, we get to learn from anger. So we can learn about, again, maybe a boundary that's being crossed by somebody that we need to like revisit, or we maybe need to kind of reiterate this boundary a little bit. Or maybe there's a value, a core value that's being ignored or that's feeling a little misaligned. And so we can revisit that value and see, okay, what's not feeling connected here. So as a passenger, anger can be really useful. As the driver, it can have some serious consequences when we act out of that anger very reactively. The same can be true for fear. When it's in the driver's seat, we can actually stay stuck in fear. It can kind of paralyze us, keep us from doing things that are important to us. When fear is a passenger giving us information and us able to use it in the way that feels the most useful, we can examine, right, first of all, any legitimate threats that exist. Is there a physical or emotional threat that exists for me? I can examine maybe an unrealistic or an unhelpful narrative or belief that I have that's kind of like rooted in this fear, right? So, as a source of information, as a passenger, hugely helpful. The same being true with anxiety, right? So, anxiety as a passenger can maybe communicate that we need to take action, that we need to prepare for something that's coming, um, but can also be really impactful as a driver in that it might keep us in really worried thoughts, or in this pattern of ruminating about things in an unhelpful way, and possibly to the detriment of our well-being, right? So just some things to keep in mind, and asking yourself again, who is in the driver's seat? And as you look at maybe today, your experience today or this week, maybe seeing if you can pinpoint specific moments where you didn't feel like you were in the driver's seat, or where you felt like you really were in the driver's seat, and just kind of noticing these patterns that evolve. So, a great reflection to do for today, for this week, or even moving forward. What happens next with all of this information as we start to understand our emotions more, make space for them? How does that impact us? How does that impact the people around us? So, for us, and this is just really a brief overview, this doesn't even capture the multitude of benefits that come from being in better relationship, better alignment with our emotions. Um, we experience more alignment with our values. And this happens a lot because when we're listening to what our emotions are telling us, we have a clearer sense of what our values are, what's important to us. It allows us to gauge in conscious decision making. So rather than staying in this space of feeling really reactive, right, letting the emotion in the driver's seat run the show, I get to make decisions on my responses based from a more conscious space. And as we do this, we get to have a better understanding and connection with ourselves, who we are, what's important to us. We experience greater self compassion, recognizing it's okay to feel what I'm feeling. The emotions aren't bad. It's part of what it means to be human. And as I make space for them and learn from them more, I can use that to help me in my life, which leads into the ability to handle stressor and to navigate difficult situations with a little bit more ease. The external impact. How does this impact the people around us? It has tremendous, tremendous impact on our relationships. So it allows us to communicate better, again, when we're not in a reactive state, but are choosing our responses more mindfully, and also understanding the information that our body is providing to us, our emotions are providing to us. We're able to communicate better, more efficiently, with more clarity, which of course leads to healthier relationships. We're also able to model what this looks like, right? To be more aware of what we're feeling, of what we're experiencing, to manage that, and to show ourselves compassion. And of course, we all know that actions speak louder than words. And so this has an impact on the people watching you, your friends, your family, your spouse, your kids, your coworkers. And as they see kind of your relationship with emotions changing, it provides more normalization of their emotions, right? Since it's okay for me to feel what I feel, it's also okay for you to feel what you feel. And that invites people into a greater sense of vulnerability and authenticity in relationships. So, with that, I know that was a lot of information, and I'm hoping that even just one thing, one piece of information is helpful. I invite you to kind of reflect on what that might be for you. Take what's helpful, leave what's not. And thank you so much for your time and for having me.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. That was so good. I loved the driving analogy. I'm like, gosh, why have I never thought of that before? That's such a great way of looking at the helpfulness and sometimes the, deterrence that emotions can bring us. So thank you so much for being here, for sharing some of your knowledge on this. We really, really appreciate it. I'm going to pass this off to Monica really quick. She is our resource and referral manager here at SAY San Diego. She has done some work diligently to help us find some resources that can go alongside this presentation and just kind of help you explore your emotions a little bit more and explore just ways to support that. So I'm going to pass it off to her and then we will wrap this up.
Thanks, Alicia. Hi, everyone. My name is Monica, and I'm the Resource and Referral Manager at SAY San Diego. Tiffany, oh my goodness. Am I the only one that was just like blown away? I mean, I know Alicia was about the driving analogy, but things have changed. The favorite thing, one of my favorite lines that Tiffany mentioned is emotions aren't the problem. Our goal isn't to make the emotions go away, but to improve our relationship with them. And that just absolutely blew my mind. So with that being said, I put together a one sheet and you'll be getting this. You can get a copy of this via email, but they're tools and strategies, and they're just some of the summaries that Tiffany had mentioned. You can also always go back to the video and go through it again to practice the tools, but also put together some links to associate with that so that you can have tools that you're able to kind of like, practice without continually watching the video, but you'll have these different options to practice. So for the first one, changing our relationship with our emotions, I linked the link that Tiffany put, and I've actually put a lot of the links that Tiffany had used through her presentation on here so you can easily access them. One of the things that I love is that we've put down are helpful tools to acknowledge our emotions at each stage of our life, because we each need different tools depending on where we are in our life. So for children, younger children, they may need more visual cues. So that being said, we've put a link for some free emotion charts and some other tools that may help your child identify how they're feeling. We have also some helpful links for teens and also for adults. We also have some programs here at SAY San Diego. We have a lot of resource centers, family resource centers that can help provide resources, whether it's resources such as food insecurity or housing assistance or any type of or parenting support, to maybe even just asking about mental health. You can always feel free to give any of our multiple family resource centers. They'll be able to help you. I am actually stationed at the Family Resource Center in El Cajon Boulevard. So if you have any questions in regards to any SAY San Diego programs, or you're just kind of wondering what we can provide to help you, you can definitely give us a call at the number below, 858-565-4148. Talk to our front desk and we'll get back to you. That's what I have for now. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Monica. I really appreciate that. And that will get sent out in an email along with our presentation, so you can review that at a later time. So this brings us to the end of our wellness webinar. As a reminder, we do have our past webinars up on our YouTube page. You can just search SAY San Diego in YouTube and lots of videos there, but our past webinars can be found there. I would highly recommend going back and looking at some of those. Again, we just want to once again thank our really wonderful presenter. We're so excited she came back to present more with us, and just for taking the time to share with us about exploring emotions and what that looks like in our lives. So we appreciate you joining us and hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks.